All right, let's dive into one of the wildest, most poetic books in all of philosophy, Friedrich Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra. This thing is, well, it's a novel, but it's also a poem and a full-on philosophical manifesto all rolled into one. So let's get right into it.
So the whole book really boils down to this one massive question. What makes an ideal human being? I mean, really think about it. Is it about just following the rules, seeking comfort, or is it something way, way bigger than that? Nietzsche? Well, he had a pretty radical answer.
And to get his ideas across, Nietzsche didn't just write an essay. No, he created this incredible character, a prophet named Zarathustra. So picture this. Zarathustra's been living alone in the mountains for 10 whole years, just thinking. And now, he decides it's time to come down and share what he's learned. We're going to follow his journey step by step and really unpack his biggest, most powerful ideas.
All right, so here's where our story kicks off. Zarathustra is coming back from the mountains, absolutely brimming with wisdom, totally ready to enlighten everybody. But his first few run-ins with people show him that, wow, the world is not what he remembered.
So as he's making his way down, he bumps into this old saint in the forest. And the saint is going on and on about his love for God. And Zarathustra just drops his most famous and maybe his most misunderstood line ever. God is dead. Now hold on, because he doesn't mean this literally, right? What he's really saying is that the idea of God, it can't be our rock anymore. It's no longer a solid foundation for where we get our morals or our sense of truth. Basically, the old rulebook, it's been thrown out.
Okay, so if God is dead, then what now? Where does humanity go from here? Zarathustra gives us this incredible metaphor. He says that humanity is like a rope, stretched tight over a massive abyss. On one side, you've got our animal past, the beast. On the other, our ultimate potential, what he calls the overman. Yeah, it's a super dangerous spot to be in, but it's also just buzzing with possibility.
And that leads us right to Zarathustra's very first big speech. He's in this town called Motley Cow, and this is where he unveils the absolute core concept of his whole philosophy, the Übermensch, or the Overman.
So what in the world is this Übermensch? First things first, let's be clear. We are not talking about a superhero in a cape. It's an ideal, right? A goal for humanity. It's a person who has become the master of themselves. The Overman doesn't look up to the heavens or out at society to be told what's right and wrong. No, they create their own values. They find meaning from the inside out. It's this incredible call to basically create yourself.
So, you might be wondering, how do you even get there? How do you become the Overman? Well, Zarathustra describes this spiritual journey, and it has 3 key stages. First up, you have to be the camel. You have to be strong enough to carry all the heavy burdens of tradition and learn discipline. But then, you transform into the lion. The lion fights for freedom. It roars no to all those old imposed values. And the final step? You become the child, a new beginning. The child is all about creativity and saying a sacred yes to life, totally ready to build something new from scratch.
So Zarathustra basically lays out 2 paths for humanity, and it's a really stark choice. On one hand, we can strive for that Übermensch ideal, embracing struggle, creating our own values. Or we can slide into becoming what he calls the last man. And you do not want to be the last man. This is his big warning. The last man is all about comfort. He just wants to be safe and cozy, and he wants everyone else to be exactly the same. No risks, no greatness. It's a pretty scary vision of a future where everyone is just kind of numb, content with mediocrity.
But here's the kicker. The people in the town, they don't want any of this Übermensch stuff. They actually laugh in his face and say, hey, make us into those last men. That sounds great. And then something tragic happens with a tightrope walker, and it's a huge wake-up call for Zarathustra. He realizes his message just isn't meant for the masses. It's for a few brave individuals, companions who are actually willing to step out onto that rope themselves.
So this rejection is a real turning point. It forces Zarathustra to totally rethink his strategy. He figures out that it's not enough to just talk about the destination, the Übermensch. He needs to explain the engine that gets you there. So he starts to focus on what he sees as the most fundamental drive in all of existence.
And he calls this drive the will to power. Now that sounds intense, right? But it's really important to understand what he means. This is not about dominating other people. Not at all. For Nietzsche, the will to power is that inner urge we all have to grow, to overcome challenges, to become stronger. And the most crucial part? It starts with power over yourself. Mastering your own impulses, your own weaknesses. That's where true power lies.
And once you see the world through this lens of the will to power, a lot of old ideas start to look, well, different. Zarathustra just dismantles traditional morality. He says things like pity actually keep people weak. He goes after the idea of making everyone equal, calling its preachers tarantulas, because he thinks that struggle is absolutely necessary for anyone to become great. He even re-examines core virtues like loving thy neighbor, seeing them as part of a slave morality that's just holding humanity back.
Okay, so all of this is building towards Zarathustra's single, most profound, and honestly most terrifying idea. He calls it the heaviest thought. And that thought is eternal recurrence. Just try to wrap your head around this. Imagine that your entire life, every single second, every joy, every heartbreak, every stupid mistake, every little victory is going to repeat exactly as it happened. Forever. An infinite loop. No second chances, no edits. I mean, this idea is so crushing that when Zarathustra finally grapples with it, he literally faints.
Because this isn't just some philosophical thought experiment. It's the ultimate test. It's asking you, could you look back at your life, all of it, the good and the bad, and say, yes, I'll take it, all of it, again and again? To love your life so completely that you'd welcome living it over and over for eternity? I mean, that is the ultimate affirmation. That's the ultimate yes.
And what's stopping us from saying yes? Zarathustra calls it the spirit of gravity. Think of it as this heavy force, the weight of all the guilt, the resentment, all those old rules that just turn life into a chore, a burden. And the only way to beat it, he says, is to learn how to be light, to learn how to dance, and most importantly, how to laugh.
This brings us to the final part of the story. Zarathustra changes his whole game plan. He's done trying to find followers. Instead, he goes back to his cave and just waits. He waits for the right people, his true companions, to find him. And you know what? Eventually, they do.
And it's this amazing, bizarre collection of characters that show up. He calls them the higher men. Get this crew. You've got two kings who got tired of being kings, the very last pope who doesn't believe in God anymore, and even a character called the ugliest man, who kind of symbolizes the guilt humanity feels for having killed God. Now, Zarathustra is clear with them. He says, look, you guys aren't the Übermensch yet, but you're the bridges. You're how we get there.
So how do these higher men prepare for the future? Not by sitting around being all serious and praying. Nope. They throw a party. They have a feast, they sing songs, and crucially, they laugh. They're literally chasing away that spirit of gravity we talked about, actively choosing joy instead of doom and gloom.
And in the middle of all this celebration, Zarathustra sings what he calls his drunken song. And it has this one line that just hits so hard. The idea is, you can't just pick and choose the good parts of life. If you say yes to even a single moment of joy, you're also saying yes to all the sorrow and pain. Why? Because it's all connected. You can't have one without the other.
So the next morning, after the party, a sign appears. Outside the cave is a lion. Remember the lion? That's the second stage of the three metamorphoses. It's a sign that the journey isn't finished, not by a long shot, but they're making progress. That fierce, free, defiant spirit is here, and it's paving the way for the next stage, the creative child.
And that's where Zarathustra's story leaves us. It doesn't end with a nice, tidy answer. It ends with a sunrise. His very last words are this powerful call to action. Arise now, arise, thou great noonday. So he leaves you with a challenge. If the old ways of thinking are gone, what new values are you going to create? What does it actually mean for you in your own life to become the creator?